Who was Raphael? Now, before we start talking about fresco painting and Raphael's great frescoes of the School of Athens, we need to know a little something about the artist, where he was from, how he matured as an artist, and what it was like for him when he arrived in Rome. So we're going to start with Urbino, the town where he was born. Urbino is a small town in the Marche region of Italy. It's essentially due east as the crow flies from Florence, but it's across the Apennine Mountains that run up the spine of Italy, and so it's very much an autonomous region on the Adriatic coast. And Urbino was a small town then, and it still is, but was an important center because it was the home of the Duke Federico da Montefeltro, who was one of the great condottieri, or essentially hired mercenaries of 15th century Italy. But he was also an erudite, educated man and a patron of the arts, and built for himself this spectacular ducal palace with its marvelous studiolo, or small private study that was his kind of great jewel box for his book collection, or his codices collection. And Federico patronized artists. He was a patron of scholarship, and he was rather learned himself. He died, unfortunately for Raphael, the year before Raphael was born. But it's in that world that his father had operated as a courtier, essentially a member of the ducal court, as much an artist as a poet and historian, maybe even a musician. So Raphael was the son of Giovanni de' Santi, or Giovanni Santi. And so Raphael is Raphael Santi, or Sancti. From his father, Raphael would have learned the rudiments of his art. I mean, he would have done everything from grind pigments to maybe even make paper. He would have learned the fresco technique from his father. In fact, there's a small fresco in Raphael's birthplace in his house where that's supposedly by Raphael, or maybe Raphael and his father collaborating. The little plaque here in Raphael's house says that this is the stone where colors were ground in the studio of Giovanni Santi. So from his father, Giovanni, Raphael learned the mechanical parts of his art, the practical side, but he also saw his father as a role model for what kind of an artist he'd like to be, as much a courtier and a scholar as a painter. Raphael's mother died when he was 8, unfortunately for him, although she must have been wonderful because he has a great affection for women throughout his life. His father sadly died when Raphael was 11, so at 11 years old, this promising young boy is now an orphan. And for the next couple of years, he begins his essentially independent life, still apprenticing a little bit under his uncle, getting whatever continuation of an education he might have had in Urbino, and then starts moving around and moves to the Umbria region, which is contiguous with the Marche region where Urbino is found. And probably by the time he's at least 13, he's with Pietro di Cristoforo Vannucci, known as Il Perugino, or Pietro Perugino. So one of the great painters of mid to late 15th century Italy, from Perugia, thus his last name. And in Perugino's studio, he would have been a more able assistant than many of the younger boys because he had grown up in an artistic world. So more than grinding pigments, he would have been actually working with Perugino on commissions like this one in the Collegio del Cambio in Perugia. So he would have been involved in fresco commissions and other public art commissions. He may have also painted this portrait of Perugino. And if he did, it gives us a window into what it must have been like to work with Perugino, who looks like a rather severe guy. But he was one of the most famous painters of Italy, and actually had painted in Rome in the Sistine Chapel. Raphael's with Perugino until he's 16. When he's 16, he goes to the small town near Perugia known as Città di Castello. And there he actually gets his first independent commission. He's joined by his father's other apprentices, so he's already got a little bit of a team with him. And so this 16-year-old boy is kind of master of his own little shop. And his first commission is for a standard or a banner to be carried by the Company of the Holy Trinity in Città di Castello. And so it's a banner painted on cloth to be, it's painted on both sides. This is the front side of it. And so at 16, he's got his first independent commission. The next year, he's going to sign a contract in Città di Castello for another project. And in that contract, he will be recognized for the first time as a master. He will be referred to as Magister Raphael Johannes Santis de Urbino, so son of Giovanni Santi and from Urbino. At 17 years old, Raphael is an independent master. And from there, the real adventure of his life begins. And we're going to consider in the next section his artistic maturity as he moves from Umbria to Tuscany. And in the last section, then we'll talk about his time in Rome.